The dust cloud rising behind the wagon train stretched half a mile across the Wyoming Territory horizon, and Quinn Oliver sat tall in his saddle watching it approach, knowing his entire future rode somewhere in that caravan of covered canvas and uncertain dreams. It was late April of 1876, and the spring thaw had turned the trail into a rutted mess of mud and possibility, bringing with it merchants, miners, and families seeking fortune in the untamed West. Quinn had been waiting 3 weeks for this particular wagon train, ever since word reached his ranch that Thomas Harrison was bringing his daughter west to start a new life after his wife's passing back in Ohio. The wind carried the scent of sagebrush and distant rain as Quinn adjusted his worn leather gloves and urged his buckskin gelding forward at an easy walk. At 26 years old, he had built his cattle operation from nothing, starting with 10 head he had driven up from Texas 5 years prior. Through hard winters, dry summers, and more near disasters than he cared to count, he had grown his herd to nearly 200 head of prime beef cattle. The Double O Ranch, as folks in Black Hawk, Colorado called it, had become one of the most respected operations in the territory. But success had come at a price. Quinn spent his days in the saddle, his nights alone in a cabin he had built with his own hands, and his future stretched before him as empty as the endless prairie. He was tired of coming home to cold stoves and colder beds. He was tired of eating beans from a tin plate and mending his own shirts by lamplight. Most of all, he was tired of the silence that greeted him each evening when he pulled off his boots and stared at the walls that enclosed nothing but his solitude. Thomas Harrison had been a business associate of Quinn's late father, a man who had corresponded with Quinn over the years about cattle prices and market conditions. When Thomas wrote 6 months ago about his wife's death and his plan to move west with his daughter Sophia, Quinn had seen an opportunity that both terrified and excited him. He had written back immediately, expressing his condolences and extending an invitation for them to visit his ranch once they arrived in Colorado. The wagon train drew closer, and Quinn could now make out individual vehicles. 23 wagons in all, their white canvas tops bobbing like ships on a sea of grass. Outriders flanked the caravan, their rifles ready against the ever-present threat of bandits or hostile encounters. Quinn raised his hand in greeting as he approached, and the lead scout recognized him, waving him forward to speak with the wagon master. "Quinn Oliver," the wagon master said, a grizzled man named Carl Winters whom Quinn had met on previous supply runs. "You are a sight for sore eyes. We have been pushing hard to make Black Hawk before the next storm rolls in." "Carl," Quinn replied, touching the brim of his hat. "I am looking for the Harrison wagon, Thomas Harrison from Ohio." Carl's weathered face creased into a knowing grin. "7th wagon back. The one with the blue ribbons tied on the back frame. Pretty thing, that daughter of his. Half the young bucks in this train have been making fools of themselves trying to catch her eye." Quinn felt something twist in his chest, though whether it was anticipation or anxiety, he could not say. "Much obliged, Carl." He rode slowly along the line of wagons, noting the weary faces of travelers who had been on the trail for months. Children peered out from canvas openings, women walked alongside to spare the oxen their weight, and men guided their teams with practiced hands and tired eyes. The 7th wagon came into view, and Quinn's breath caught despite his best efforts to remain calm. She was walking beside the wagon, one hand resting lightly on the wooden frame as she navigated the uneven ground. Her dress was simple calico, faded from sun and washing, but she moved with a grace that made the rough surroundings seem inconsequential. Dark hair fell in a braid over her shoulder, and when she turned at the sound of his approaching horse, Quinn found himself looking into eyes the color of creek water in summer, gray-green and impossibly clear. Sophia Harrison stopped walking, her hand tightening on the wagon frame. She was younger than he had imagined, perhaps 21 or 22, with delicate features that somehow suggested strength rather than fragility. Dust coated her dress and smudged her cheek, but she held her chin high as she regarded him with frank curiosity. "Miss Harrison," Quinn said, removing his hat as he brought his horse alongside her. "My name is Quinn Oliver. I have been corresponding with your father." "Mr. Oliver," she replied, her voice carrying a slight hoarseness that spoke of weeks breathing trail dust. "My father mentioned you might meet us on the trail. He is driving the wagon." As if summoned by her words, Thomas Harrison's weathered face appeared around the canvas top. "Quinn, by God, it is good to see you, son. Pull up and ride with us a spell. We can talk while we cover ground." Quinn swung down from his saddle, preferring to walk rather than tower over Sophia from horseback. He fell into step beside her, leading his horse with easy familiarity. Up close, he could see the toll the journey had taken on her. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, and her hands, though clean, showed the roughness of hard work. Yet there was something unbroken in her bearing, a resilience that made Quinn's respect for her deepen before they had exchanged more than a dozen words. "Your father wrote that you lost your mother," Quinn said quietly. "I am sorry for your loss. My own mother passed when I was 15, and I know there are no words that make such a loss easier to bear." Sophia glanced at him, and he saw surprise flicker across her features. "Thank you," she said simply. "It has been difficult. Mother was the heart of our home. Father and we are still learning how to exist without her." They walked in silence for a moment, the creak of wagon wheels and the lowing of oxen providing a steady rhythm to their steps. Quinn searched for something to say, some way to bridge the gap between strangers who might, if fortune smiled, become something more. "Tell me about Ohio," he said finally. "I have never been east of Kansas." A small smile touched Sophia's lips. "Ohio is green," she said. "Green in a way this land is not. Trees everywhere, and rain that comes soft and regular instead of in violent storms that tear the sky apart. Our farm had apple orchards and fields of corn that stretched down to the river." "You miss it?" She considered the question carefully. "I miss what it was, but that life ended when Mother died. Father could not bear to stay in the house where she had lived, where every room held her memory. He needed to move to start fresh somewhere new, and I could not let him come alone." "That takes courage," Quinn observed. "Leaving everything familiar behind. Or desperation," Sophia replied with unexpected honesty. "Sometimes I cannot tell the difference anymore." Thomas Harrison called back from the wagon seat. "Quinn, come up here and tell me about this ranch of yours. Your letters paint quite a picture, but I want to hear it straight from your mouth." Quinn moved forward, but Sophia touched his arm lightly, stopping him. "Thank you," she said, "for asking about Ohio. Most people out here only want to talk about where we are going, not where we came from." Her touch, brief as it was, seemed to burn through the fabric of his sleeve. Quinn nodded, not trusting his voice, and moved to walk beside the wagon where he could converse with Thomas, while still remaining aware of Sophia's presence just behind him. "The Double O has good water year-round," Quinn told Thomas. "A creek runs through the property, fed by mountain snowmelt. The grazing is solid enough to support 500 head if managed properly. I have 187 cattle right now, plus horses. The cabin is sound, built from lodge pole pine with a stone fireplace. There is a barn, a smokehouse, and a root cellar." "Sounds like you have done well for yourself," Thomas said approvingly. "Your father would be proud. He always said you had the makings of a fine rancher." I had good teachers, Quinn replied. And I have been fortunate. The winters have been mild these past few years, and I have managed to avoid the worst of the rustler problems that have plagued some of my neighbors. They talked cattle and weather and market prices as the wagon train continued its steady progress toward Black Hawk. The sun climbed higher, burning off the morning chill, and Quinn found his attention continually drifting back to Sophia. She had pulled a bonnet over her hair to shield her face from the sun, and she walked with the steady endurance of someone who had learned to pace herself for the long haul. When the wagon train stopped for a midday rest, Quinn helped Thomas tend to the oxen while Sophia built a small fire and prepared a simple meal of salt pork and beans. Quinn noticed how efficiently she worked, wasting no motion, creating a serviceable meal from limited supplies. When she handed him a plate, their fingers brushed and he saw a faint flush color her cheeks. "Will you ride with us into Black Hawk?" Thomas asked as they ate. "We should reach town by tomorrow evening if this weather holds." "I plan to," Quinn said. "My foreman is watching the ranch, and I told him I would be gone a few days." He hesitated, then pushed forward with the question that had been building in his mind since he first saw Sophia. "I was hoping, with your permission, I might call on Miss Harrison once you are settled. If she is agreeable to it." Thomas set down his plate and regarded Quinn with the measured gaze of a father weighing the character of a potential suitor. "You are a good man, Quinn. Your father was my friend, and his son has proven worthy of that friendship. But Sophia must make her own choice in this. She has had a hard few months, and I will not push her toward anything she does not want." "I would not expect otherwise," Quinn said. "I only ask for the opportunity to let her know me better, so she can make an informed decision." "Sophia," Thomas called. "Come here a moment, daughter." She approached, wiping her hands on her apron, her expression curious but guarded. "Yes, father, Quinn has asked permission to call on you once we are settled in Black Hawk. What do you think of that?" Sophia looked at Quinn, and he felt the weight of her assessment. She was not a woman given to quick judgments or easy answers, he realized. She measured him as he had seen his father measure horses, looking for soundness and character beneath the surface. "I think," she said slowly, "that I would like to know Mr. Oliver better before I make any commitments, but I am not opposed to visits provided they are conducted properly." "Fair enough," Quinn said, relief and anticipation warring in his chest. "I am not a man who rushes into things, Miss Harrison. I believe in taking the time to build something solid, whether it is a ranch or a relationship." A hint of warmth entered her gray-green eyes. "Then we are in agreement, Mr. Oliver." The wagon train resumed its journey, and Quinn rode alongside the Harrison wagon for the rest of the day. As the hours passed, conversation came easier. Sophia told him about her mother's flower garden and the way spring arrived in Ohio with drifts of wild violets. Quinn described the majesty of the Rocky Mountains at sunset and the sight of elk herds moving through the high meadows. They spoke of books they had read, dreams they harbored, and the small details that made up the fabric of their lives. By the time the wagon train circled for the night, Quinn felt as though he had known Sophia for years rather than hours. There was an ease between them that surprised him, a comfortable silence that did not need to be filled with empty chatter. When he helped her down from the wagon in the evening, his hands spanning her waist, he felt the warmth of her through the layers of fabric and knew with absolute certainty that he wanted this woman in his life. The camp settled into its evening routine. Fires bloomed like flowers across the circle of wagons, and the smell of cooking food mingled with wood smoke and horse sweat. Children ran between the wagons until their mothers called them in, and men tended to livestock while women cleaned dishes and prepared for another night under the stars. Quinn helped Thomas picket the oxen and check the wagon wheels for damage. As they worked, Thomas spoke quietly. "She likes you. I can tell. Sophia has not shown interest in anyone since we left Ohio, despite no shortage of young men trying to catch her attention." "She is remarkable," Quinn said honestly. "Strong and smart and not afraid to speak her mind. I did not expect that." "Her mother was the same way," Thomas said with a sad smile. "Elizabeth could outthink most men I knew and never made any apology for it. She raised Sophia to be independent, to think for herself. It makes her challenging, but also worth every bit of effort." Quinn nodded, understanding what Thomas was really telling him. Sophia Harrison was not a woman who would simply follow where a man led. She would be a partner, an equal, someone who expected to be consulted and respected. The idea did not intimidate Quinn. If anything, it made him want her more. That night, he spread his bedroll near the Harrison wagon, close enough to provide protection if needed, but far enough to maintain propriety. He lay awake for a long time, staring at the stars scattered across the black sky like scattered seed, listening to the sounds of the camp settling into sleep. Somewhere in the darkness, a harmonica played a mournful tune, and a woman sang a lullaby to her child. Quinn thought about the cabin waiting for him at the Double O Ranch, about the emptiness he had grown accustomed to, and wondered if he dared hope that emptiness might soon be filled. The next day dawned clear and cold, with frost sparkling on the grass like crushed diamonds. Quinn was up before first light, building up the fire and setting coffee to boil. When Sophia emerged from the wagon, wrapped in a wool shawl against the morning chill, she smiled at him with genuine pleasure. "You did not have to do that," she said, gesturing at the fire. "I know," Quinn replied. "But I wanted to." They shared coffee and hard biscuits as the camp came to life around them. Thomas joined them, stiff from sleeping on the hard wagon bed, and the three of them talked about what awaited in Black Hawk. Thomas had plans to open a general store, using the contents of his wagon as initial inventory. He had saved money from the sale of his farm, enough to purchase a building and establish himself in business. "There is room above the store," Thomas said. "Sophia and I will live there until I can build her a proper house. It is not much, but it will serve." "Black Hawk is a good town," Quinn assured him. "Growing fast with the mining operations in the mountains. You should do well with a store. The nearest other option is Central City, and that is a hard ride, especially in winter." "Will you stay in town?" Sophia asked Quinn. "Or do you need to return to your ranch?" "I should get back soon," Quinn admitted. "Calving season is starting and my foreman will need help. But I thought I might stay a day or two, help you get settled if you need it." "We would appreciate that," Thomas said. "I am not as young as I used to be, and the idea of unloading that wagon by myself is daunting." The final leg of the journey passed quickly. By mid-afternoon, the wagon train crested a rise, and Black Hawk spread out below them in the valley. The town had grown since Quinn's last visit 2 weeks prior. New buildings were going up, and the main street bustled with activity. Smoke rose from a dozen chimneys, and the sound of hammers and saws echoed off the surrounding hills. The wagon train dispersed as families peeled off to their various destinations. Carl Winters guided the Harrison wagon to a 2-story building on Main Street, a solid structure with large windows and a covered porch. A sign hanging above the door read "For sale or lease," and Thomas studied it with satisfaction. "This is the one I arranged for by mail," Thomas said. "The owner is supposed to meet me here with the deed." Quinn helped Thomas and Sophia unload their immediate necessities while they waited. The upper floor of the building was raw and unfurnished, but it had good bones. 4 rooms plus a kitchen area, with windows that overlooked the street. It would be cramped for two people used to a farmhouse, but it was dry and solid and safe. The property owner arrived, a portly man named Henderson who had made his fortune in mining supplies. Papers were signed, money changed hands, and by sunset, Thomas Harrison was officially a property owner in Black Hawk, Colorado. Quinn worked alongside them until full dark, helping to unload the wagon and organize supplies. Sophia directed the work with quiet efficiency, making decisions about placement and priority that showed she had already thought through how the store would be arranged. When Quinn finally prepared to ride back to his ranch, he found Sophia on the porch, looking out at the darkened street. The temperature had dropped sharply with the sunset, and her breath misted in the cool air. "Thank you for your help," she said. "You did not have to give us so much of your time." "I wanted to," Quinn said, echoing his words from that morning. He stepped closer, emboldened by the darkness and the privacy it provided. "Miss Harrison, Sophia, I would like to call on you properly. Not just to visit, but to court you with serious intentions. I know we have only just met, but I feel something here, something worth exploring. Do I have your permission to try?" Sophia turned to face him fully, and even in the dim light from the windows behind them, he could see the intensity of her gaze. "I feel it too," she admitted softly. "It frightens me how quickly this has happened. But yes, Mr. Oliver Quinn, you have my permission to court me. I cannot promise where it will lead, but I am willing to see where this goes." Relief and joy surged through Quinn, strong enough to make him momentarily light-headed. "May I come to dinner this Sunday? I could bring fresh meat, maybe some vegetables from my root cellar." "Sunday dinner sounds perfect," Sophia agreed. "We will look forward to it." Quinn wanted to kiss her, wanted to pull her into his arms and feel her warmth against him, but he settled for taking her hand and bringing it to his lips, a gesture that was both restrained and intimate. Her fingers trembled slightly in his, and when he released her, he could see the flush on her cheeks. "Until Sunday, then," he said. "Until Sunday," she whispered. The ride back to the 00 Ranch seemed both too long and too short. Quinn's mind raced with possibilities and plans, with hopes he had not dared to entertain before today. By the time he reached his cabin, the moon was high overhead, casting silver light across the familiar landscape. His foreman, a grizzled veteran of the cattle trade named Pete Carson, came out to meet him. "About time you got back," Pete said gruffly. "We have 3 new calves and the fence in the north pasture needs mending. Also, Johnson was by looking for you. He wants to talk about joining herds for a drive to Denver in the fall." Quinn dismounted and began unsaddling his horse, his mind only half on Pete's words. "The calves doing well, all healthy. Their mothers are being good to them." Pete squinted at Quinn in the moonlight. "You look different." "Something happened in town. I met someone," Quinn said, unable to keep the smile from his face. "A woman, Sophia Harrison. Her father is opening a store in Black Hawk." Pete let out a low whistle. "Well, I'll be. The confirmed bachelor finally gets bit by the love bug. She pretty?" "Beautiful," Quinn said. "But it is more than that, Pete. She is smart and strong and not afraid of hard work. I think she might be the one." After one meeting, Pete sounded skeptical but amused. "I know it sounds crazy," Quinn admitted. "But I just know, the same way I knew this land was right when I first saw it. Some things you just feel in your bones." Pete clapped him on the shoulder. "Then I hope it works out for you, boss. This ranch could use a woman's touch. And you could use someone to keep you from working yourself into an early grave." The next few days passed in a blur of activity. Quinn threw himself into ranch work with renewed energy, fixing the north fence, checking on the new calves, and riding the property lines to ensure everything was secure. But his mind was never far from Sophia. He found himself planning what to say, what to bring, how to make Sunday dinner perfect. When Sunday finally arrived, Quinn spent an embarrassing amount of time making himself presentable. He bathed in the creek, shaved carefully, and dressed in his best shirt and trousers. Pete watched the preparations with barely concealed amusement, but had the good sense to keep most of his comments to himself. Quinn loaded his saddlebags with gifts: a haunch of venison from a deer he had shot 2 days prior, early spring greens from the wild lettuce growing near the creek, a jar of honey he had traded for with a neighbor, and in a moment of inspiration, a bouquet of wildflowers he had found blooming in a sheltered meadow. The ride to Black Hawk seemed to take forever. Quinn checked and rechecked the position of the sun, worried he would arrive too early or too late. When he finally reached the store, he found it transformed. The windows were clean, and merchandise was arranged attractively behind the glass. A new sign hung above the door: Harrison General Store. Through the window, Quinn could see Thomas helping a customer, and pride surged through him at how quickly the older man had established himself. He climbed the exterior stairs to the living quarters above and knocked, his heart hammering against his ribs. Sophia opened the door, and Quinn nearly forgot how to breathe. She wore a dress of deep blue that brought out the color of her eyes, and her dark hair was swept up in a style that revealed the graceful curve of her neck. She had clearly taken as much care with her appearance as he had with his. "Quinn," she said, her smile warm and genuine. "Come in. We have been expecting you." The apartment had been transformed as well. Curtains hung at the windows, rugs covered the rough wooden floors, and furniture that had been in the wagon was now arranged to create a cozy, welcoming space. The smell of cooking filled the air, something savory and rich that made Quinn's stomach rumble. "I brought some things," Quinn said, suddenly feeling foolish standing there with his armload of offerings. "For dinner." Sophia's eyes lit up when she saw the flowers. "They are beautiful," she said, taking them reverently. "I have not seen wildflowers in months. Let me put them in water." Thomas emerged from the back room, wiping his hands on a towel. "Quinn, good to see you, son. That venison will be perfect." "Sophia has been cooking all day, determined to impress you." "Father," Sophia protested, but she was laughing. Dinner was a revelation. Sophia had prepared venison stew with the greens Quinn brought, fresh bread that steamed when broken open, and a dried apple pie sweetened with the honey he had provided. They ate at a small table by the window, the evening light slanting through the glass and turning everything golden. The conversation flowed easily, moving from the challenges of establishing a new business to memories of past lives to hopes for the future. Quinn found himself telling them about his early days in Colorado, the mistakes he had made, the lessons he had learned the hard way. Thomas shared stories about Ohio and about Quinn's father, tales that made Quinn ache with missing a man he had not seen in years. But it was Sophia who captivated him most. She spoke about her mother's death with a raw honesty that took his breath away, about her fears and doubts about coming west, about her determination to make a new life despite the uncertainty. She was not afraid to be vulnerable, but neither did she seek pity. She simply told her truth and let it stand. As the meal concluded and Thomas excused himself to check on the store, Quinn and Sophia found themselves alone. She led him to a pair of chairs by the window, and they sat watching the street below as evening settled over Black Hawk. "I have been thinking about what you said," Sophia began quietly. "About courting me with serious intentions. I need you to understand something, Quinn. I am not the same woman I was 6 months ago. Losing my mother, leaving my home, it changed me. I am harder now, more guarded. I cannot be hurt again and survive it." Quinn turned to face her fully. I would never hurt you intentionally, Sophia, but I am also not going to lie and say relationships are easy. My parents loved each other deeply, but they fought sometimes. They struggled. Love is not always soft and gentle. Sometimes it is work and compromise and choosing each other even when it is hard. I know that, she said. My parents were the same way. They were partners in everything, equal in ways that shocked some of our neighbors. My mother ran our farm as much as my father did, made decisions, handled money. She taught me never to be less than I am for any man. Good, Quinn said firmly. I do not want you to be less than you are. I want a partner, Sophia. Someone who will work beside me, who will tell me when I am wrong, who will build something with me that neither of us could create alone. I have no interest in a wife who simply does what she is told. Sophia studied him for a long moment, and Quinn felt as though she was looking straight through him, seeing every flaw and weakness he possessed. Finally, she nodded. I believe you mean that, but meaning it and living it are different things. How do I know you will not change your mind once we are married, assuming we get that far? How do I know you will not expect me to be silent and obedient once you have legal control over my life? It was a fair question, and Quinn respected her for asking it. I cannot give you a guarantee, he said honestly. All I can offer is my word and my actions. Court me as much as I court you, Sophia. Watch how I treat you, how I treat others. Ask questions about me around town. I have nothing to hide. And if at any point you decide I am not the man you thought I was, walk away. I will not stop you or make it difficult. That is all I can ask, Sophia said softly. She reached out and took his hand, her fingers intertwining with his. I like you, Quinn Oliver. I like you more than is probably wise after such a short acquaintance, but I am willing to see where this leads. They sat in comfortable silence as darkness fell completely outside. Finally, Quinn reluctantly stood to leave. May I call on you again? Maybe Wednesday evening if you are not too busy with the store. Wednesday would be lovely, Sophia agreed, walking him to the door. Perhaps you could show me around Black Hawk. I have barely seen anything beyond this building. It would be my pleasure. This time, when he took her hand to say goodbye, she squeezed his fingers and let her touch linger. It was a small thing, but it filled Quinn with warmth that lasted the entire ride home. The courtship that followed was unlike anything Quinn had experienced before. He had courted girls in his youth, clumsy attempts that never went anywhere, but this was different. This mattered in a way that made every interaction feel weighted with significance. He called on Sophia 3 times a week, bringing gifts and conversation in equal measure. He showed her Black Hawk and the surrounding area, taking her to his favorite spots and introducing her to the people who mattered in his life. She met Pete Carson and charmed him within minutes. She examined his ranch with the eye of someone assessing a potential investment, asking smart questions about water rights and grazing land and profit margins. In turn, Sophia opened up to him. She showed him the journal she kept, filled with observations about her new home and sketches of the landscape. She introduced him to the books she loved, lending him volumes of poetry and philosophy that they discussed during long evenings on her porch. She let him see her grief and her strength, her fears and her hopes, until Quinn felt he knew her soul as well as her face. 6 weeks after they met, as spring bloomed across Colorado in a riot of wildflowers and new growth, Quinn invited Sophia to spend a day at the 00 Ranch. Thomas gave his permission with a knowing smile, extracting a promise that they would be properly chaperoned. Pete agreed to stay within earshot, though he made it clear he had better things to do than play nursemaid to courting adults. Quinn picked Sophia up in his wagon, and they made the journey through morning sunshine that turned the world golden and new. She exclaimed over the mountains rising in purple majesty to the west, over the herds of antelope that scattered at their approach, over the vast sweep of prairie that seemed to stretch forever. When they reached the ranch, Quinn helped her down from the wagon and felt his breath catch at the expression on her face. She was looking at his cabin, at the barn and corrals, at the cattle scattered across the pasture, and her eyes were shining. "It is beautiful," she said. "Quinn, you have built something remarkable here." Pride filled him, warm and sweet. "It is not finished. There is so much more I want to do: expand the house, build a proper bunkhouse for hired hands, improve the breeding stock. But it is a start." "It is more than a start," Sophia said firmly. "It is a foundation, a place where something great could be built." He showed her everything, holding nothing back. She met the cattle, laughing when a curious calf came to investigate her skirts. She explored the cabin, running her hands over the furniture he had built, examining the stone fireplace, looking out the windows at the view he woke to every morning. She checked the root cellar and the smokehouse, assessed the garden plot he had never found time to properly tend, and pronounced everything sound and full of potential. They ate lunch by the creek, sitting on a blanket Pete had grudgingly provided. Sophia had packed cold chicken and fresh bread, and Quinn contributed early strawberries he had found growing wild near the water. The food was simple but perfect, made special by the company and the setting. "I need to tell you something," Quinn said as they finished eating. His heart was pounding so hard he was sure she could hear it. "I have been thinking about this for weeks, trying to find the right words and the right time. I do not know if this is either, but I cannot wait any longer." Sophia set down her cup and gave him her full attention, those gray-green eyes serious and focused. "I love you," Quinn said, the words falling into the space between them like stones into still water. "I know it has only been 6 weeks. I know people will say it is too fast, too soon. But I know my own heart, Sophia, and it belongs to you. I love your strength and your honesty. I love the way you think and the way you see the world. I love your courage and your kindness. I love everything you are, and I want to spend my life with you." Tears welled in Sophia's eyes, catching the sunlight like diamonds. "Quinn." "Wait," he said gently. "Let me finish. I'm not asking you to marry me today. I know you need time, and I respect that. But I needed you to know how I feel, where this is heading for me. I want you as my wife, Sophia. I want to build a life with you, here on this ranch. I want to wake up next to you every morning and go to sleep beside you every night. I want children with you, a family, a future. But only if that is what you want too." Sophia reached out and took both his hands in hers. "I love you too," she whispered. "I have loved you since that second Sunday when you brought me books because I mentioned missing the library in Ohio. Maybe even before that. It terrifies me how much I feel for you, but I cannot deny it anymore." Joy exploded through Quinn, bright and overwhelming. He pulled her into his arms, and she came willingly, her face tilting up to his. Their first kiss was soft and sweet, a gentle exploration that quickly deepened into something more urgent. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathing hard, and Quinn could see the same desire in Sophia's eyes that burned through his own veins. "Marry me," he said. "Not today, not next week, but soon, as soon as you are ready. Marry me, Sophia, and let me spend the rest of my life making you happy." "Yes," she said, laughing and crying at the same time. "Yes, I will marry you. But Quinn, there is something we need to discuss first, something important." He tensed slightly, worried about what she might say. "What is it?" "My father," Sophia said. "He has sacrificed everything to bring me west, to give me a new start. I cannot just leave him alone above the store. He needs family around him, especially now while he is still grieving my mother." Quinn relaxed and then smiled. "I already thought of that." I have a proposal if you are interested. Your father is a businessman, and I need help expanding my operation. What if he became a partner in the Double O Ranch? He could keep the store in town, but invest in the cattle operation. We could build him a small house here on the property, something close enough that he could be part of our daily lives but far enough that we all have privacy. He would have family nearby, and I would have the capital and expertise to grow the ranch. Sophia's face lit up with an emotion so powerful it took Quinn's breath away. You would do that? Offer him a partnership? I would do anything to make you happy, Quinn said simply. But it is not just for you, Sophia. Your father is a good man and a smart businessman. Having him as a partner would benefit everyone. Besides, he grinned, I like Thomas. I would enjoy having him around. I love you, Sophia said again, pulling him in for another kiss. I love you so much I can barely breathe with it. They spent the rest of the afternoon making plans and dreaming out loud about the future. Sophia wanted to expand the garden, to raise chickens and maybe some pigs. Quinn wanted to improve the cattle bloodlines, to build a reputation for quality stock. Together, they envisioned a ranch that was not just a business but a home, a place where family and work intertwined seamlessly. When Quinn took Sophia back to Black Hawk that evening, they went straight to Thomas to share their news. The older man listened with a mixture of joy and sadness, clearly thrilled for his daughter but also aware that he was losing her in some fundamental way. I give you my blessing, Thomas said gruffly, pulling Quinn into an embrace. But I have one condition. I want to feel that my daughter is valued properly, that she is not just another acquisition but something precious. Quinn pulled back and looked Thomas in the eye. Name your condition. I will meet any reasonable request. Thomas glanced at Sophia, then back to Quinn. I want you to make a formal bride price offer, something that shows the community and my daughter how much you value her. It is an old custom, maybe outdated, but it matters to me. Sophia started to protest, but Quinn held up a hand. What are you thinking, Thomas? Money? Property? Cattle, Thomas said. You are a rancher. Your wealth is measured in livestock. I want you to offer cattle as a bride price, a significant number that shows this is not a casual decision. Quinn did not hesitate. 40 head, he said. 40 head of prime beef cattle. It is nearly a quarter of my herd, a significant portion of my wealth. But Sophia is worth far more than the whole herd, Thomas. She is worth everything I have and everything I will ever build. Sophia gasped, her hand going to her mouth. Quinn, no, that is too much. You cannot give away so much of your ranch. I can and I will, Quinn said firmly. Your father is right. This shows the community and shows you how serious I am. 40 head of cattle is a steep price, but you are worth every single one and more. Do you accept, Thomas? Thomas's eyes were suspiciously bright. I accept. And Quinn, the cattle will be my investment in the partnership you proposed. You are not losing them. You are gaining a partner and a family. The wedding was planned for late June, giving them 8 weeks to prepare. Those weeks flew by in a whirlwind of activity. Quinn and Pete spent long days selecting and separating the 40 head that would serve as the bride price, choosing the best animals from the herd. Thomas, true to his word, immediately began planning how to use those cattle to expand the ranch operation. Sophia sewed her wedding dress with help from other women in Black Hawk, creating a gown of simple ivory silk that made her look like something from a fairy tale. She also worked with Quinn to plan the expansion of the cabin, drawing designs for additional rooms and a proper kitchen. They decided to hold off on building Thomas's house until after the wedding, wanting to focus on creating their own space first. The morning of the wedding dawned clear and perfect, with a sky so blue it hurt to look at. The ceremony was held in the small church in Black Hawk, with most of the town in attendance. Pete served as Quinn's best man, grumbling about having to wear a suit but secretly pleased to stand up for his employer and friend. One of the women Sophia had befriended, a miner's wife named Margaret, stood as her matron of honor. When Sophia walked down the aisle on her father's arm, Quinn felt tears sting his eyes. She was so beautiful it almost hurt, but more than that, she was his. This remarkable woman had chosen him, had agreed to bind her life to his, and he could barely comprehend his good fortune. The vows were traditional, but when Quinn spoke them, he meant every word with an intensity that shook him. To have and to hold from this day forward, for better or for worse, for richer or for poorer, in sickness and in health, until death parted them. He would honor these promises if it killed him. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Quinn kissed Sophia with all the love and passion he had been restraining for weeks. The congregation laughed and applauded, and when they finally broke apart, both were flushed and breathless. The celebration that followed was boisterous and joyful. The entire town seemed determined to welcome Sophia into the community and congratulate Quinn on his marriage. Food appeared from every household, creating a feast that covered multiple tables. Musicians struck up lively tunes, and dancing filled the street as the sun climbed toward noon. Through it all, Quinn could not stop touching Sophia. His hand found hers constantly, or rested on the small of her back, or brushed a stray curl from her face. He needed the physical confirmation that this was real, that she was truly his wife now. As the afternoon waned, they made their escape, climbing into the wagon Quinn had decorated with ribbons and wildflowers. The crowd cheered and called out good-natured advice as they headed out of town toward the Double O Ranch. Thomas waved them off with a smile, understanding that the newlyweds needed time alone. The ride to the ranch seemed to take forever, though Quinn pushed the horses as fast as he dared. Sophia sat close beside him, her hand on his thigh, her head occasionally resting on his shoulder. They did not talk much, both too overwhelmed by emotion and anticipation to form coherent thoughts. When they finally reached the cabin, Quinn swept Sophia into his arms and carried her over the threshold, a tradition that made her laugh with delight. Pete had made himself scarce, leaving a note that he would be staying in town for a few days to give them privacy. A fire burned in the hearth, and the cabin was spotlessly clean, evidence of Pete's unspoken wedding gift. Quinn set Sophia on her feet slowly, letting her body slide against his until they stood pressed together. "Hello, wife," he said softly. "Hello, husband," she replied, her eyes dark with desire. They came together in a rush of passion that had been building for weeks. Clothing fell away as they stumbled toward the bedroom Quinn had prepared with clean sheets and wildflowers scattered across the quilt. Their lovemaking was urgent and sweet, awkward and perfect, a claiming and a surrender that left them both shaking and satisfied. Afterward, they lay tangled together in the fading light, skin against skin, hearts gradually slowing to normal rhythms. Sophia traced lazy patterns on Quinn's chest, and he played with her hair, spreading it across the pillow like dark silk. "I was afraid," Sophia admitted quietly. "Afraid it would not be as I imagined, that I would be disappointed or disappointing." Quinn pressed a kiss to her forehead. "You could never disappoint me. That was perfect, and it will only get better as we learn each other." "I love you," she said, tilting her face up for a kiss. "I love you so much it scares me sometimes." "I know," Quinn said. "I feel the same way, but we do not have to be scared together. We can be strong for each other." They made love again as darkness fell, slower this time, exploring and learning the geography of each other's bodies. When they finally slept, it was wrapped in each other's arms, complete in a way neither had ever been before. The first weeks of marriage were an adjustment. Sophia threw herself into making the cabin a home, sewing curtains and arranging furniture, and scrubbing everything until it gleamed. She planted a garden with seeds she had brought from Ohio, creating neat rows of vegetables that she tended with determined care. She learned to cook for ranch hands, to preserve meat, to make soap and candles and all the 100 small things that kept a household running. Quinn, for his part, worked to include Sophia in every aspect of ranch management. He taught her to ride well enough to accompany him on his rounds. He explained the cattle business, showing her the breeding records and profit calculations. When decisions needed to be made, he consulted her, valuing her perspective and often following her advice. Thomas visited regularly, riding out from town every Sunday for dinner. He and Quinn worked on plans for expansion, using the 40 head of cattle as seed stock for a breeding program. Thomas's business acumen combined with Quinn's ranching expertise created a powerful partnership. By late summer, they had acquired additional grazing land and were negotiating contracts to supply beef to the mining camps in the mountains. As autumn painted the landscape in shades of gold and crimson, Sophia began to suspect she was pregnant. She waited to tell Quinn until she was certain, choosing a quiet evening in late September when they sat on the porch watching the sun set. "I have news," she said, taking his hand and placing it on her still flat stomach. "We are going to have a baby, sometime in early spring, I think." Quinn's reaction was everything she could have hoped for. His eyes went wide with wonder, and then he was pulling her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. "A baby," he whispered. "Sophia, are you sure?" "As sure as I can be without a doctor confirming it, but I know my body and I am certain." "We need to expand the cabin," Quinn said immediately, his mind already racing ahead. "The baby will need a room and we need to winterize better. And you need to stop working so hard. No more heavy lifting or long days in the garden." Sophia laughed at his sudden protectiveness. "I am pregnant, not fragile. Women have been having babies since the beginning of time, often while doing far more strenuous work than I do. I will not take foolish risks, but I will not become an invalid either." I know," Quinn said, forcing himself to calm down. "I just want you and the baby to be safe. You are the most precious things in my world." "We will be fine," Sophia assured him. "We are strong, your child and I." Thomas wept openly when they told him the news the following Sunday. He would be a grandfather. A role he had feared he might never have after Elizabeth's death seemed to close the door on future joy. The three of them celebrated with a special dinner, talking late into the night about names and futures, and all the possibilities a new life represented. Winter came early that year, sweeping down from the mountains in a fury of snow and ice. Quinn worked tirelessly to ensure the cattle were secure, and the cabin was weatherproofed. He stocked the root cellar with enough supplies to last through multiple blizzards, determined that Sophia would want for nothing. The pregnancy progressed without major complications, though Sophia suffered from morning sickness that lasted well into the afternoon, and an exhaustion that sometimes left her sleeping 12 hours a night. Quinn doted on her shamelessly, bringing her tea and crackers in bed, rubbing her aching feet, reading to her when she was too tired to hold a book herself. On a bitter cold night in early March of 1877, Sophia went into labor. Quinn rode like a madman through the darkness to fetch the midwife from Black Hawk, nearly killing his horse in his desperation. Thomas met him in town and rode back with them, his face drawn with worry for his daughter. The labor was long and difficult. Sophia labored through the night and into the next day, her strength flagging as the hours stretched on. Quinn paced the main room like a caged animal, listening to her cries and feeling helpless in a way he never had before. Thomas sat in grim silence, his hands clenched into fists. Finally, as the sun was setting on the second day, a baby's cry pierced the air. The midwife emerged, smiling tiredly. "You have a son," she said, "and your wife is exhausted but fine." Quinn rushed into the bedroom to find Sophia propped against pillows, her hair damp with sweat, her face pale but glowing. In her arms was a tiny bundle wrapped in the blanket she had sewn during the long winter nights. Quinn approached slowly, almost reverently, and looked down at his son. The baby was red-faced and wrinkled, with a shock of dark hair and eyes that were still the unfocused blue of all newborns. But he was perfect, absolutely perfect, and when Quinn reached out a tentative finger and the baby's hand closed around it with surprising strength, Quinn felt his heart expand so rapidly he thought his chest might burst. "He is beautiful," Quinn said, his voice thick with emotion. "You did so well, Sophia. I am so proud of you." "We need to name him," Sophia said wearily. "I thought maybe Quinn Jr." Quinn shook his head. "No, let him have his own name, his own identity. What about Samuel? Samuel Thomas Oliver, after his grandfather." Tears spilled down Sophia's cheeks. "Samuel Thomas Oliver. It is perfect." Thomas was allowed in moments later, and the old man wept again as he held his grandson, touching the tiny face with gentle fingers. "Elizabeth would have loved him," he said softly. "She would have been so happy." "She knows," Sophia said. "Somehow, I think she knows." The months that followed were a blur of sleepless nights and constant demands. Samuel was a good baby generally, but he had a powerful set of lungs and used them frequently. Sophia recovered slowly from the difficult birth, and Quinn found himself doing more household work than he ever had, cooking meals and washing diapers while Sophia rested and nursed the baby. But there was also joy unlike anything Quinn had ever experienced. Watching Samuel grow and change, seeing Sophia blossom into motherhood, feeling his family knit together into something solid and unbreakable, these things filled Quinn with a contentment he had not known was possible. As spring turned to summer and Samuel grew from a helpless infant into a chubby, smiling baby, the ranch prospered as well. The cattle herd expanded, the partnership with Thomas proved profitable, and Quinn's reputation as an honest rancher and good neighbor spread throughout the territory. They hired 2 additional hands to help with the workload, and Pete finally agreed to move into the small foreman's house they built near the barn. On a warm evening in late June, almost exactly a year after their wedding, Quinn and Sophia sat on the porch watching Samuel play on a blanket at their feet. The baby had recently discovered his toes and was fascinated by them, grabbing at them with determined concentration. "You ever regret it?" Quinn asked. "Leaving Ohio, marrying me, building this life out here?" Sophia turned to look at him, her expression serious. "Not for a single moment. This life is hard, Quinn. Harder than anything I experienced in Ohio, but it is also richer, fuller. I have purpose here. I have a partnership with you that most women never experience with their husbands. I have a son I love more than my own life. No, I do not regret a single choice that led me here." "I traded 40 head of cattle for your hand," Quinn said softly, "and you were worth the whole herd." "You are worth everything I have or will ever have. And I traded everything I knew, my entire past, for a future with you," Sophia replied. "I regret nothing." They sat in comfortable silence as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple and pink. Samuel babbled contentedly, and somewhere in the distance, cattle lowed as Pete and the hands moved them to fresh pasture. It was an ordinary moment, unremarkable in its simplicity, but to Quinn, it was everything. As the stars began to emerge, bright points of light against the darkening sky, Sophia leaned her head on Quinn's shoulder. "Tell me again about the future," she said, a phrase that had become something of a ritual between them. Quinn smiled and wrapped his arm around her. "We will expand the herd even more, become one of the largest operations in Colorado. Samuel will grow up learning the ranch, and maybe he will have brothers and sisters to help him run it someday. We will build Thomas a proper house, and he will live here until he is very old, surrounded by grandchildren who love him. We will celebrate 50 anniversaries, you and I, and when we are ancient and gray, we will sit on this porch and tell our grandchildren about the day I traded 40 cattle for the most precious thing I would ever own." "I like that future," Sophia murmured. "Let us make it happen." "Together," Quinn agreed. "We will make it happen together." The years that followed bore out their dreams with remarkable fidelity. The ranch expanded until the Double O became synonymous with quality cattle across the territory. Samuel grew into a strong, intelligent boy who loved the land as much as his father did. He was joined by a sister, Emma, 2 years later, and another brother, Daniel, 3 years after that. Thomas's house was built halfway between the main cabin and the town, positioned so he could be part of the family while still maintaining his store and independence. He became a beloved grandfather, teaching his grandchildren to read and cipher, telling them stories about their grandmother Elizabeth and the life they had left behind in Ohio. The partnership between Quinn and Thomas flourished, expanding beyond cattle into other ventures. They invested in mining claims, transportation, and eventually helped establish a bank in Black Hawk. Their success was built on mutual respect, honest dealing, and the kind of trust that only comes from genuine affection. But more than business success, the Oliver family became known for their genuine love for each other. Neighbors commented on the way Quinn looked at Sophia even after 10 years of marriage, as though he still could not quite believe his good fortune. They noted how Sophia stood beside Quinn as a true partner, her opinion sought and valued in all decisions. The children grew up secure in the knowledge that they were loved unconditionally, raised by parents who modeled respect and partnership. There were hard times as well. A drought in 1882 nearly bankrupted them before late summer rains saved the grazing. Daniel caught scarlet fever when he was 4, and for 3 terrifying weeks, Sophia and Quinn took turns sitting by his bedside, willing him to live. He survived, but the experience left them both shaken, more aware than ever of how fragile life could be. Through it all, their love deepened and matured. The passion of early marriage mellowed into something richer, more complex. They learned to fight fairly and forgive quickly. They discovered that marriage was indeed work sometimes, requiring patience and compromise and the daily choice to put the other person first. But they also found that the work was worth it, that building a life together created a foundation nothing could shake. On their 25th wedding anniversary, Quinn and Sophia renewed their vows in the same church where they had married. Samuel was 24 now and managing much of the day-to-day ranch operations. Emma was 22 and engaged to the son of a neighboring rancher. Daniel was 20 and attending university in Denver, studying agriculture with plans to bring modern ranching techniques back to the Double O. Thomas, now 78 and increasingly frail, sat in the front pew and wept just as he had at the original wedding. The church was packed with friends and neighbors, employees and business associates, all come to celebrate the love story that had become legendary in Black Hawk. When Quinn took Sophia's hands and repeated the vows he had first spoken 25 years before, his voice was strong and sure. When Sophia responded with her own promises, tears streaming down her face, the congregation wept with her. And when they kissed, it was with the same passion and tenderness that had marked their first kiss by the creek so many years ago. At the celebration afterward, held at the now sprawling Double O Ranch, Quinn stood to make a speech. The ranch had grown to encompass thousands of acres, the original cabin now the heart of a compound that included multiple houses, large barns, and all the infrastructure of a major operation. But Quinn still remembered what it had been like when he first brought Sophia here, when it was just one man's dream and an uncertain future. 25 years ago, Quinn said, his voice carrying across the assembled crowd, I made a deal with Thomas Harrison. I offered 40 head of cattle, nearly a quarter of everything I owned, for the hand of his daughter. People thought I was crazy. 40 head was a steep price for any bride, especially when I barely knew her. He found Sophia in the crowd and held out his hand to her. She came to stand beside him, and he wrapped his arm around her waist. But I knew even then what I know even more certainly today. Sophia was worth the whole herd. She was worth every cow I had and every one I would ever own. She was worth this ranch and everything we have built. Because none of it, not the land or the cattle or the success or the money, none of it means anything without her. He turned to face Sophia fully, holding both her hands in his. You are still worth everything, Sophia. You are the foundation upon which everything good in my life is built. You gave me children and partnership and a love I did not know was possible. You turned a cabin into a home and a business into a legacy. You are my best friend, my greatest love, and the wisest decision I ever made. I would trade 40 cattle for you again in a heartbeat. I would trade 400 or 4,000. You are worth everything, and I thank God every day that you chose me. There was not a dry eye in the audience as Quinn kissed his wife tenderly. The celebration continued long into the night, with music and dancing and the kind of joy that comes from witnessing true love endure. Thomas passed away peacefully in his sleep 2 years later, at the age of 80. He died in the house Quinn and Sophia had built for him, surrounded by children and grandchildren, having lived to see his daughter happy and his family prosper beyond anything he could have imagined. His funeral was attended by hundreds, a testament to the man he had been and the legacy he had built. Sophia grieved deeply, but she was comforted by the knowledge that her father had lived a good life after Elizabeth's death. He had not let grief destroy him, but had instead chosen to rebuild, to invest in the future, to love his grandchildren with the same devotion he had once given his wife. It was a lesson Sophia and Quinn took to heart, a reminder that life was precious and should be lived fully, even in the face of loss. The years continued to pass, marked by weddings and births and all the milestones that make up a life. Samuel married and gave them grandchildren. Emma's marriage produced more grandchildren, filling the ranch with the sound of children's laughter again. Daniel eventually returned from university and revolutionized the ranch's operations, increasing efficiency and profitability while maintaining the quality that had made the Double O famous. Quinn and Sophia aged together, silver threading through their hair, lines mapping their faces with the story of their years. But they remained active and engaged, Quinn still riding out to check on cattle even as he approached 60. Sophia still managing the household and keeping meticulous records of the ranch's operations. On their 50th wedding anniversary, the celebration was even larger than the 25th had been. Children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren filled the ranch, along with friends old and new. Quinn and Sophia stood before them all, still holding hands after 50 years, and renewed their vows one more time. I, Quinn Oliver, take you, Sophia, to be my wife, Quinn said, his voice cracking slightly with age but still strong with conviction. I promise to love you, honor you, and cherish you for as long as we both shall live. You have been my partner and my love for 50 years, and if God grants us 50 more, I will spend every day trying to be worthy of you. I, Sophia Oliver, take you, Quinn, to be my husband, Sophia replied, her voice clear and sure. I promise to love you, honor you, and cherish you for as long as we both shall live. You have exceeded every dream I had for my life. You have been my rock, my joy, and my greatest adventure. I love you more today than I did 50 years ago, and I will love you more tomorrow than I do today. The minister who presided over the ceremony, a young man who had heard the legend of Quinn and Sophia his entire life, could barely get through the pronouncement without crying. When he finally declared them still married, the crowd erupted in applause and cheers. At the reception, Quinn's grandson, Samuel's oldest boy, approached him shyly. "Grandfather, is it true? Did you really trade 40 cows for grandmother?" Quinn looked down at the 8-year-old, then over at Sophia, who was laughing at something one of their great-grandchildren had said. She was 71 now, her dark hair completely white, her face lined with age. But when she turned and caught his eye, when she smiled at him with all the love and warmth that had sustained them through 50 years, Quinn saw the same beautiful young woman who had stepped off a wagon train so long ago. "I did," Quinn told his grandson. 40 head of prime beef cattle. It was nearly everything I had at the time. Was she worth it? The boy asked innocently. Quinn laughed and ruffled the boy's hair. "She was worth the whole herd, son. She was worth everything I had and everything I would ever have. That is what love means. Finding someone so precious that you would trade everything for them, and knowing they would do the same for you. I hope I find someone like that someday," the boy said wistfully. "I hope you do too," Quinn agreed. "And when you do, do not let anything stop you from making them yours. Not fear, not doubt, not the opinion of others. When you find real love, you hold on to it with everything you have." As the sun set on their 50th anniversary, Quinn and Sophia slipped away from the celebration. They walked together to the spot where Quinn had first told Sophia he loved her, by the creek that ran through the heart of the ranch. The water still ran clear and cold, fed by the same mountain snowmelt that had sustained them for 5 decades. They sat on the same blanket, now worn and patched but carefully preserved. Sophia leaned against Quinn's shoulder and he wrapped his arm around her, marveling that, after 50 years, she still fit perfectly against him. "You remember that first day I brought you here?" Quinn asked. "When I told you I loved you." "Every detail," Sophia said. "I was terrified and thrilled in equal measure. I could not believe someone like you could love someone like me." "Someone like me," Quinn laughed. "Sophia, you were so far above me I could barely see you. You were educated and refined and beautiful. I was just a cowboy trying to make a living off stubborn cattle and difficult land." "You were never just a cowboy," Sophia said firmly. "You were a man of vision and integrity. You saw potential in this land and in me. You built something from nothing and made me part of it. You gave me a life I never could have imagined back in Ohio." "We built it together," Quinn corrected. "Everything we have, everything we accomplished, it was a partnership. I could not have done any of it without you." They sat in silence for a while, watching the stars emerge one by one. The sounds of the anniversary celebration drifted on the breeze, laughter and music and joy. Their family, their legacy, their future. "Tell me again about the future," Sophia said, echoing the phrase they had repeated countless times over the years. Quinn smiled and held her closer. "The ranch will continue to prosper under Samuel and Daniel's leadership. Our grandchildren will carry on what we started, building on the foundation we laid. They will tell our story to their children, about how a young cowboy traded 40 cattle for a young woman's hand and never regretted it for a single moment. "And us," Sophia prompted. "What about our future?" "We will grow old together, watching our family flourish," Quinn said. "We will sit on that porch and tell stories about the old days. We will argue about whose memory is correct and laugh at how time has softened the hard edges of difficult years. And when our time comes, we will leave this world knowing we lived fully, loved deeply, and left something good behind." "That sounds perfect," Sophia murmured, "though I hope we have a few more years yet." "Many more years," Quinn agreed. "I am not done with you yet, Sophia Oliver. I have 50 more anniversaries planned at least." Sophia laughed, the sound still as bright and joyful as it had been 5 decades earlier. "Then I suppose I better stick around. Someone needs to keep you honest." They returned to the celebration hand in hand, moving slowly but steadily. Their children and grandchildren made room for them at the head table, and the party continued late into the night. There were speeches and toasts, stories told and retold, memories shared and laughter abundant. As midnight approached, Quinn stood one more time. The crowd quieted, knowing he had something to say. He looked around at all the faces, at the family he and Sophia had created, at the friends who had become like family, at the legacy of love that would outlive them both. "50 years ago," Quinn began, "I made the best trade of my life. I gave up 40 head of cattle, and I gained everything that matters. I gained a partner who made me better. I gained children who brought joy beyond measure. I gained a life of purpose and meaning. And I gained love, true love, the kind that sustains and strengthens and survives everything time can throw at it." He turned to Sophia, his voice growing thick with emotion. "I would do it again, Sophia. If I could go back to that moment when I stood before your father and offered him 40 cattle, knowing everything we would face together, the hard times and the good times, the losses and the victories, all of it, I would still make that trade in a heartbeat. Because you were worth the whole herd then, and you are worth the whole world now." Sophia stood and went to him, ignoring the cheers and applause of their family. She took his face in her hands and kissed him, soft and sweet, a kiss that spoke of 50 years of devotion and countless more promises yet to keep. When they finally separated, Sophia looked out at the assembled crowd. "And I would trade everything I had and everything I was for the chance to love this man," she said clearly. "I left behind my home, my past, everything familiar, and I have never regretted it, because Quinn gave me something more precious than security or comfort. He gave me partnership and respect, and a love that has only grown stronger with time. We built this life together, stone by stone, day by day, and it is more than I ever dreamed possible." The celebration continued until the early hours of the morning, when the last guests finally departed, and the family settled into their various quarters around the ranch. Quinn and Sophia walked slowly back to their bedroom in the main house, the original cabin that had been expanded and improved over the years, but never abandoned. As they prepared for bed, moving through the comfortable routine of 50 years of marriage, Quinn watched Sophia brush her white hair and thought about all the times he had watched her perform this same ritual. Thousands of nights, tens of thousands of brushstrokes, and he still found beauty in the simple domesticity of it. "What are you thinking about?" Sophia asked, catching his eye in the mirror. "How lucky I am," Quinn said simply. "How blessed beyond measure." "We were both lucky," Sophia corrected gently. "We found each other at exactly the right moment when we were both ready for love." They climbed into bed, and Quinn pulled Sophia close, her back against his chest, fitting together the way they had for 50 years. Outside, The night was quiet except for the distant sound of cattle and the whisper of wind through the grass. "I love you, Sophia Oliver," Quinn murmured into her hair. "I love you, Quinn Oliver," she replied, her hand finding his and lacing their fingers together. They slept that way, as they had for 18,000 nights before, wrapped in each other and secure in the knowledge that they had built something that would last beyond them. A love story for the ages, born in the Wild West when a cowboy traded 40 head of cattle for a woman's hand, and discovered she was worth the whole herd and so much more. The years that remained to them were gentler than those that had come before. They slowed down, as age demanded, but they never stopped being partners. Quinn still consulted Sophia on every major ranch decision, and Sophia still rode out with him on occasion to check the herds, though at a more leisurely pace than in their youth. They watched their grandchildren marry and their great-grandchildren arrive, adding new branches to the family tree they had planted so long ago. The Double O Ranch continued to prosper, now one of the most successful operations in Colorado, known throughout the territory for quality cattle and honest dealing. On a warm spring morning in their 58th year of marriage, Quinn suffered a heart attack while riding fence with Daniel. He was rushed back to the house, where Sophia held his hand while the doctor was summoned. The doctor did what he could, but they all knew Quinn's time was limited. For 3 days, Quinn drifted in and out of consciousness, with Sophia never leaving his side. The family gathered, filling the house with quiet conversations and shared memories. On the evening of the 3rd day, Quinn's eyes opened clearly for the first time since the attack. "Sophia," he whispered, and she was immediately at his side, taking his hand in both of hers. "I am here, my love," she said, tears streaming down her face. "I am right here." 58 years, Quinn said, his voice weak but still full of wonder. "Not enough. A lifetime would not be enough with you." "We have had a good life," Sophia said, though her heart was breaking. "We built something beautiful together. Our children, our grandchildren, this ranch, it all came from the love we shared." "Best trade I ever made," Quinn said, a ghost of his old smile touching his lips. 40 cattle for you, worth the whole herd." "Worth everything," Sophia agreed, pressing his hand to her cheek. "You gave me everything, Quinn. A life beyond my wildest dreams. Love beyond measure. I am grateful for every moment." "Tell our story," Quinn said, his breathing becoming more labored. "Tell the grandchildren, the great-grandchildren. Tell them that real love is possible, that it is worth fighting for, worth sacrificing for. Tell them what we had." "I will," Sophia promised. "I will tell them every day. Your love will live on in every generation, Quinn. What we built together will never die." Quinn's eyes began to close, and Sophia leaned in close, her lips near his ear. "I will love you forever," she whispered. "In this life and whatever comes next. You are my heart, Quinn Oliver. You always have been and you always will be." "Love you," Quinn managed one more time, his fingers tightening weakly around hers. "Always." He took one more breath, then another, each one shallower than the last. And then, surrounded by his family but focused only on Sophia, Quinn Oliver slipped peacefully away. Sophia sat with him for a long time after he was gone, holding his hand and memorizing every line of his beloved face. The family gave her space, understanding that she needed this final moment alone with the man who had been her partner for 58 years. When she finally stood and walked out of the room, she was dry-eyed and steady. She had wept, would weep more in the days to come, but right now, she needed to be strong for her children and grandchildren. Quinn would have expected no less from her. The funeral was the largest Black Hawk had ever seen. People came from across Colorado to pay their respects to Quinn Oliver, a man who had been known for his integrity, his business acumen, and most of all, for his devotion to his wife. He was buried on a hill overlooking the ranch, with a view of the mountains he had loved and the land he had worked for over 60 years. At the graveside, Sophia spoke briefly. "My husband was a good man," she said simply. "He was honest and hardworking and loyal. But what I will remember most, what I hope you all will remember, is how he loved. He loved with his whole heart, holding nothing back. He showed me every day for 58 years that I was valued and cherished. That is the legacy I want for him. Not the ranch or the cattle or the business success, but the example of how to love completely and without reservation." Sophia lived for 7 more years after Quinn's death. She remained active in ranch management, though Samuel and Daniel handled most of the day-to-day operations. She spent her time with her grandchildren and great-grandchildren, telling them stories about their grandfather and about the Wild West they would never know. True to her promise, she told their story often. She told about the wagon train and the 40 cattle, about Quinn's proposal by the creek and their wedding day. She told about the hard times and the good times, about building the ranch from almost nothing into something substantial. She told about 58 years of partnership and love, of choosing each other every day even when it was difficult, on a quiet evening in late spring. Almost exactly 7 years after Quinn's death, Sophia sat on the porch of the main house, watching the sun set over the ranch. She was 83 now, frail and tired, ready to join Quinn in whatever came next. Her great-granddaughter, a bright girl of 10 named Elizabeth after her great-great-grandmother, sat beside her. "Tell me again, Grandma Sophia," Elizabeth said, "about Grandfather Quinn and the 40 cows." Sophia smiled and began the story one more time, her voice growing stronger as she spoke of the love that had defined her life. She told about Quinn's courage in offering such a steep bride price, about her father's wisdom in accepting it, about how that gesture had shown her from the very beginning how much Quinn valued her. "He used to say I was worth the whole herd," Sophia concluded, her eyes distant with memory. "But the truth is, we were both worth more together than we ever could have been apart. That is what real love is, Elizabeth. Finding someone who makes you better, who makes your life richer and fuller. And when you find that person, you hold on to them with everything you have." "I hope I find love like that someday," Elizabeth said wistfully. "I hope you do too, sweetheart," Sophia said, patting the girl's hand. "And when you do, remember your grandfather and me. Remember that love takes work and commitment and the daily choice to put the other person first. But it is worth every bit of effort. It is worth everything." That night, Sophia went to bed in the room she had shared with Quinn for so many years. She lay down on what had been his side of the bed, something she had done every night since his death, and closed her eyes. She thought about their first kiss, their wedding day, the birth of their children, 58 years of mornings and evenings and ordinary moments that had made up an extraordinary life. In the morning, her family found her gone, passed peacefully in her sleep with a smile on her face. She was buried beside Quinn on the hill, their graves marked by a single stone that read, "Quinn and Sophia Oliver, partners in life and love." He traded 40 head of cattle for her hand. She was worth the whole herd. The Double O Ranch continued for generations, passing through the Oliver family and remaining one of the most successful cattle operations in Colorado. The story of Quinn and Sophia became legend, told and retold until it took on the quality of myth. But those who had known them personally, who had witnessed their love firsthand, insisted the legend did not do justice to the reality. They had been real people who faced real challenges and built a real life together. They had not been perfect, had made mistakes and suffered setbacks like anyone else. But they had loved each other with a devotion that transformed everything around them. They had shown that true partnership was possible, that romance could survive the harsh realities of frontier life, that love could indeed last a lifetime. The ranch prospered for over 100 years, eventually being donated to the state of Colorado as a historical site. Visitors walked the grounds where Quinn and Sophia had worked and loved, saw the original cabin where they had started their life together, and stood at their graves on the hill overlooking the land they had tamed. And always, tour guides told the story of the cowboy who traded 40 head of cattle for a woman's hand because he knew she was worth the whole herd. It became a symbol of love in its purest form, of someone willing to sacrifice everything for the person they loved. It inspired countless young people to believe that real love was possible, that finding a true partner was worth any price. The legend lived on, passed from generation to generation, a reminder of what love could be when given freely and completely. And somewhere, in whatever comes after this life, Quinn and Sophia Oliver were together again, their love unbroken by death, their partnership continuing into eternity. It was a love story for the ages, born in the Wild West when a young cowboy took a chance on a young woman from Ohio and discovered that the best things in life are always worth fighting for, worth sacrificing for, worth trading everything you have because you know, deep in your soul, that what you are gaining is infinitely more precious than what you are giving up. Quinn traded 40 head of cattle for Sophia's hand. She was worth the whole herd. But more than that, she was worth every sunrise he ever saw, every breath he ever took, every beat of his heart. And he, in turn, was worth every tear she shed, every sacrifice she made, every moment of fear or doubt or hardship. Together, they were worth more than the sum of their parts. They were a testament to the transforming power of love, a living proof that two people, when truly committed to each other, can build something that lasts long after they are gone. Their story ended as all stories must, but the love that had created it lived on. In their children and grandchildren, in the ranch that still bore their name, in the legend that inspired others to believe in the possibility of lasting love. Quinn and Sophia Oliver had lived and loved and left the world better than they found it. And in the end, that was the greatest legacy of all.